Project Hail Mary is an important book for me for two reasons. One, this copy was an in-person book fairy from my pal Greg. Two, it is one of the best encapsulations I've seen of an author marrying compelling, highly rigorous scientific storytelling with a narrative that is as much about the heart as it is about the calculations. This is a very easy book to spoil, so I'm going to do my best not to do that. No guarantees. A man wakes up aboard a spaceship with no idea who he is or how he got there. That's called amnesia. Judging by the two other dead bodies in the room with him, he realizes that he is alone, with the faint recollection that some very bad things are happening on Earth. As the story progresses, we catch up on the plot alongside the lonely, intrepid astronaut. He is Dr. Ryland Grace, a middle school science teacher in San Francisco who gave up on advanced molecular biology after a paper he wrote about the requirements for life was met with widespread derision. We also learn that there is an extinction-level crisis happening on Earth, and his mission is to save humanity. No pressure. The sun is dying, and time for Dr. Grace and for Earth is rapidly running out. Overwhelmingly, yes. 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 Amazing. Amazing. The thing I loved the most about Project Hail Mary is the same thing I loved about Interstellar, which makes me cry every time I watch it. And that is a heavily scientific story that is ultimately about people. The power of the human heart as the prime mover. One of the most commendable things about Project Hail Mary is the level of scientific rigor, accuracy, and depth that is brought to the science enacted throughout. Dr. Grace gives highly detailed, sometimes painful, descriptions of his experiments and calculations as we watch him work to save Earth in real time. His ability to work out experiments and build contraptions for testing is phenomenal. And those often serve as a lot of the core drama within the story aboard the spaceship. Sometimes the experiments work brilliantly. Sometimes they do not. He is a genius up against a ticking clock with a real shelf life on his supplies. If he can't solve it, no one else will be able to. This book also has a lot of gripping political drama as humanity puts aside its petty squabbles and combines global forces to try to save humanity. Wouldn't that be nice? And the story of how Dr. Grace ends up on the Hail Mary is tremendous. This book is heavily emotional. The sun is dying. Grace has been sent on a one-way mission that he does not remember agreeing to. And his struggle to reconcile his fate with the fate of the Earth, yikes. Brilliant stuff. There's also some seriously heavy and actually really enjoyable relationship stuff that happens throughout the book that I'm not going to get into because that would be a super spoiler. And if you've read Project Hail Mary, you know what I'm talking about, so please don't be a dick in the comments and spoil it for people. Based on what I knew about this book going in, this book actually ended up being like a huge left turn from what I expected it to be based on conversations with friends and just looking at the cover. Mostly in a good way. This book really struggled across three areas for me, and they're minor and probably petty. Firstly, I did not like Dr. Grace. Or it would be more accurate to say that I did not like Dr. Grace's stream of consciousness internal monologue that comprises the first 40% of the book. The author does a good job with it, I just don't prefer that style of storytelling. Grace is also just kind of a, gee, ain't that swell kind of goofball, and I also don't like that. He regularly says things like, darn, gosh, what the heck, and gosh darn. Bro, you are trying to save humanity. Can we get serious for a minute? Like if they made an astronaut movie for kids in the 90s with Jim Carrey as the astronaut and it was rated PG. That actually sounds kind of awesome now that I've said it out loud, but it did not work for me here. Grace is fine when he's dealing with other people in the flashbacks, but him alone is not my favorite part of the book. I think that sometimes some of the scientific rigor gets in the way of the emotive potential of the story. We hit a point where we realize that yes, Dr. Grace is a genius and he can always find the answer to whatever it is he's looking for. So getting the nitty-gritty details on some of his calculations and experiments later in the book loses some of its luster for me. And I think it stood in the way of what could have been some really powerful emotive moments. Just like watching a car go over 200 miles an hour for the 37th time is probably not as exciting. This is a very powerful book, but I think there was some more that could have been squeezed out there. And lastly, I did not care for the ending. That might be controversial on its own, so feel free to DM me if you want to fight about it. I just wanted different choices to be made. Project Hail Mary is a terrific, amazing, wonderful work of speculative science fiction, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it. 4 out of 5 hammers.